What's that? Oh, I'm trying to extend my laptop. No, that's okay. I still haven't gotten work to read appropriate.
So you what?
So I still can't get work to read appropriate.
Oh, no.
Just this one. They're like well expired. But I lived there until last July. That's the for season.
Okay. In RU or
Roanoke Rapids.
Still
At least far northeast.
yeah, right by Virginia.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is your familiarity with
We used to live at Fort Bragg.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
It was,
Okay, yeah.
well, it was not really cool. It was hot and humid, but yeah.
Yeah, Roanoke Rapids is not very well suited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's just while I was there, I was years.
Yeah, I was in there. We have one role in totally fine.
That's amazing.
So I'm really interested in it.
Wow. When we moved to West Carolina, that was
I know.
So, talk to her all the time.
And fat, you gotta add some fat.
And, that was kind of her focus.
That's what you eat.
Good grade.
Oh, are you dating like, no, I need to be vegan to one next year. That's my plan, so I'll be vegan.
And,
Jesus.
we did everything equal, like, yeah, now, that year now, test, and it was a letter back, he was sorry, you can't attend school. No, I don't know how it's president, military.
The other one is.
Oh.
So,
That's, I can't
it was pretty lame, and they actually changed the policy about 5 years later. Where they said,
Right.
I had a couple friends who actually neat for them.
Yeah.
I was here in the can.
No, they only make
It's
exceptions.
been weird, but I only take high school and it's not as like it. And it's gonna
Yeah,
work out
that was
so
a
much better
really
because
big
my
thing there.
son's starting ninth grade, so
Oh, yeah.
I really don't wanna be, and he's not here, so I'm like, okay, that's actually better.
Oh, that's good. Embarrassing something.
Mhm.
My daughters are at Valencia, so
Mhm.
they're gonna have to put up with the fact that I'm there.
You're gonna have to live with that.
But it was great.
Although I'm
It seemed
there
like a
all the
great
time,
like,
because they're in the band, so
whole bunch of kids with-
they're
Yeah,
so
my son
several
is-
days a week around, so
My
kids
son
are
is so
used to
funny.
seeing.
Yeah, but that's cool. My son pretty much always runs a band.
Yeah, I
He
love that one.
is not really trying to band. So pretty much.
But
So I told him, I said, you gotta go music first. I know, oh, this was in high school, yeah,
Not like
come on, go
this.
try. I'm like, okay.
it was worse than this.
Oh.
I just not weather related.
Hey, you just,
I don't know, it's there.
I think girls are different, but.
Yeah.
He's just really brilliant in some ways.
No, it's just.
And like,
When you walk
his
indoors,
currency
it
changes,
continues
like
to
what
sweat for an
people
hour.
want
Yes.
money and then he doesn't care about it. And then he wants something else and he doesn't.
I've
It's
only
like,
been up there once.
it's hard to stay on your toes with it.
And it was kind of warm, but.
You have $2?
Right, and winter's kind of
Both in
okay.
high school.
Yeah, my brother's
I
been
still
still
hear
here
that.
10 years, so we decided
Oh, wow.
to make a vacation out of it. We're gonna go tour the DC
Yeah,
and walk
so
the
next year-
whole.
Do you have 2 kids total?
Oh,
Right.
it's awful. It's like America. It's
We mostly why there's
Some
some
ones for
tickets available.
Correct.
come up here.
yeah, I mean, I sometimes even the humidity there is
Good.
Just me.
Pretty bad.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
the south.
It was awful, awful hot.
I usually love it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed the
I mean,
training.
Although I did.
Trying to.
Can I ask general questions?
Sure.
That came up with my middle ed teacher. So one was
way
the gift box or raffle prizes. Is that something we do get?
Yes, it will arrive. To be honest, I'm not sure exactly
Okay.
when, probably like a little while in the school year.
So does that go directly to the school?
It will go, in the past, it's gone direct, this will go directly to me. It'll either go directly to the teacher, it'll probably go directly to the
Any names that you
teacher.
Lane?
Where,
Aaron,
yeah,
this
it
weekend?
has the tickets in it, and then some set of prizes, but I'm not sure what they are.
And then another question we had was the books that go to the kids. Are those books or is it just a PDF?
I live here.
It's
So,
not this,
and
so,
actually, I put a church
they-
nice and in Glendale
for
I
insurance.
just
like,
started
they're
going
required to purchase any books, it's
locally
just the book
this
it
year.
is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so that's really
they
big. How about you?
could ask them to purchase it.
Grace
If
Community.
you would just like,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
100%.
Since it was in college.
Yeah, actually, I think we have neighbors that go there.
We'll sign the excerpts every 2 weeks maybe.
Yeah.
Just ends up
I think it's
not
kind of
much.
funny, like, you were terrible.
So they will like either send it to the PDF or like have it read online.
Okay, well, because that's the impression I got is that they're handing out a
Finding this year,
PDF.
like, oh.
But then I'm told we can't
Now we just need to move on.
require
I
them
won't
to have a
move my
computer
hand.
at
I need
home
5 minutes.
to do
I'll turn it
reading.
out, but I need to.
Sure,
So,
yeah.
so that means somehow
I know all
we
my.
print it out.
Some of them, right,
That's
West
one
Valley.
option.
Yeah,
You know,
Surgeons in Cedar
Or
Sinai.
also, yeah, it's cool, it's just like usually.
So
when
what
it's
can you get?
like you order it. It's just generally it doesn't come down
For
to
something
the
that big,
Right.
I like, that's only
So
hospital.
yeah, printing out would be one option. And you probably wouldn't assign that in person anyway.
Eric, okay.
That would be,
Yeah,
yeah,
those are my 14.
Okay.
generally.
I'm like a civ.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, because sometimes you end up with
We
it
have a
later.
big bazillion parents, I don't remember anybody's name.
I'll ask them all over again. Kids' names, I'm like, I'm gonna be writing them down,
Yeah.
writing,
Or like
memorizing,
looking
and
at
doing
it,
flashcards.
Yeah. Online.
I know, well, I asked the teacher about whether we could get them.
Or, I mean, that's traditionally what you
So
should
they
do,
actually
you
said
have
that.
to can actually just print
I
those.
said, well, I don't know if that's allowed, I'll forget it in school. Like,
Well, I know,
But
the
how do we learn this?
next two- Yeah, the next two girls have their websites.
Well, apparently my school, or I guess our district has the Google Drive set up for every kid.
Well, each
Each
school
school's gonna have them put it there.
What is it?
each school is different.
Absolutely. Who has the best one?
Yeah.
Huh?
Bel Air, your school?
Belair. Oh no. I live in Dorsey.
I know.
I know, right?
Just messing.
That's like
It's
anti-Belair.
the Bel Air.
That's why he went to Belair.
So where are you?
Sorry?
What high school are you in?
Dorsey.
Dorsey, okay, down south.
Downtown.
No, you're at a hall up here then.
Yes, it was a bit of a drive. There's only 2 accidents on the 405 this time. So it was, yeah.
They were further south
I
than
remember
where I was.
going
Yeah.
south last week, last week,
Uh-huh.
to, was it 53rd Street or 51st Street to get off and going down by Dodger Stadium. Either there was a game or something, but it was packed from
Yeah.
Burbank all the way through, all the way when you got to the Harbor Freeway.
Yeah, whenever you take the 10 like that, it's just that entire stretch from like the 2 to where it, hits like 10 itself. It's just bad.
We haven't called you yet.
Oh,
Is
no
this that
worries.
sheet that the handout we're supposed to grab?
Yes.
I didn't even-
Dave.
in a couple of weeks.
To be on vacation.
Hopefully.
But,
yeah.
yeah, you don't hear from him after a little while longer, I can reach out to him.
Yeah, what I haven't tried to do is call him. So I can go ahead and call him before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you been in touch with Jerry?
I've talked to Jerry a couple times.
Okay. He's like pretty involved, I feel like.
Yeah, he sounds like that's good. As soon as he has two classes.
Right, so he's probably going to be doing a lot of teaching himself, which is almost good, because then you all can kind of like plan together and not bring, but
Okay, so the content online is not what I guess in the last class, not what I want.
it depends. Like, I mean, there's a bunch of online modules that are like online only. So I would definitely do Mario and Tom.
Those are done. So
Then you're kind of okay, because you're not going to assign those two until like this November, like until a little while anyway. So like you can always, as long as you're not private with the kids, you're private. But Mario comes up and Tom come up quick-ish, so you want to have those done already. And I mean, the rest of the online stuff, a lot of it is on like teaching strategies. It's pretty helpful.
yeah, that's I've got to sit down and start.
Yeah, like
Wasn't it? I mean, like, we got back to a bunch of water. That's so cool.
If you're missing something, which I probably am, sitting out there, how do you determine the direction of the ball in degrees? Or am I supposed to calculate that from map coordinates, which I didn't think that kids you'd want kids doing.
Right, so there's this block called like get costume number of blank,
Right.
and if you select it, costume number drops down to like a variety of things, so you can get like direction, position, blah 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 of any sprite.
Okay.
It's kind of like not obvious, but yeah. So then you can just get the direction of it and reverse it
I knew
and
it
do
was
whatever
in
you
there.
do.
It had to be there somewhere.
Choose a random.
Well, I guess so you can do that too, I guess. Or it's probably good to introduce some degree of randomness, but like if you want to start from its current direction, you can grab it from that get costume number of.
I was seeing someone as like, oh yeah, I remember. I forgot. I just learned that you could like, because I was like, why is there no X, Y coordinates on the screen? So I have to go back and back guessing. Today I found out that you could put X, Y on there and click it, and that's showing you the coordinates.
That's one way.
There's a background also, there's actually coordinates.
Okay.
Right,
I
not
must
background,
know.
what do you call it?
It's
Stage.
The stage.
Okay, I heard
And then there's, or the get costume number block, you can also get X, you can also get X or Y
Okay,
of it as well.
okay.
So, yeah, a little tricks.
I know, it's like, oh, there's gotta be a better way.
Right.
And then I'm like,
Then once you
today
know
looking
it-
at it going, yeah, that's way too easy.
Then, yeah,
Yeah.
that's like, those are like the things that to note, like, when we show kids this, like, on
Yeah.
day one before they get
Okay.
incredibly frustrated. Yeah, that's,
Is the AP gonna be,
today's is kind of all combined.
it's all combined, so it does definitely go to stuff.
Six. It's scheduled till
Six.
six only.
Oh, okay.
And so if I put it back, I'm like, we might be done by then, or we'll probably should be working on something.
Okay.
So it's,
Okay.
yeah, it'll be fine.
Okay, all right, cool.
Sweet.
Thank you.
Okay, so we should probably start the warm-up activity. So the general idea is, you just did some stuff on like formative assessments over the last week or so, and if you didn't, that's okay. So the idea behind formative assessment is that you're trying to like figure out as kids are working, like where they're at. So at all times during the class, you're trying to get an idea of like assessing what they understand, what they don't understand, like what to do next, even if you're not giving them a test or a quiz. So like one good way to do that is just ask questions. So like as you're delivering material, you just like intersperse questions and you call on the kids to get an idea of like what they understand. So the purpose of this activity is I'm giving you a set of new material that you would introduce, so basically like your lecture. So in this case, I try to pick a topic that's kind of like AP intro, goes either way. So like Boolean operators. So in this case, you'd be introducing the kids like these Boolean operators and or and not, and saying, okay, like and is true if both these things are true, or is true if at least one of them is true, and so on. And then pointing to the syntax. So either like how you write it in Java, or like alternatively, you probably show kids like the blocks they can use. So that's the general intro to new material. What I want you to think of is what is the formative assessment question that you might ask after you present this to kids to figure out like what they, whether they understood it or not. So like think of a question that you would ask and then how you would call on kids. So would you like pick a specific student? Would you pick a random student? Would you have like multiple students go around and answer it? Would you have them, everyone write down the answer and then like have a few kids share? So kind of like take a couple minutes to think of that, and then what I would like to do is have somebody come up and actually deliver that. So like go through talking through part of this, and then like ask the question and model how they would get the answer to people. Does that make sense? Okay. Cool. That will be our warm-up activity. If you guys didn't already get food random, feel free to do that. If you want to get on Wi-Fi, the network is like WSHS. You just have to accept something online. A minute and a half more. So you're thinking of a question you could ask to assess whether students understand this information that you just told them, and how you would ask it. So is there anybody that actually would like to come up and maybe talk through like the end part of this and then lead into their question and actually ask it the way that they were planning to ask it? might as well give it a shot. You gotta, you have to teach it for kids anyway in a couple days, a couple weeks. Okay, does anyone want to share the question that they wrote down?
So I just came up with like a verbal phrase, and again, this is probably more complex if we've gotten further into the plan, but rather than just having a simple one, I said, we want to create a statement if X is between 1 and 5 inclusively, excluding 3, or greater than 10.
Nice.
So that we could try to use all the operators and try to get the ideas of invest those thoughts and try to get that down to one statement.
Great. And then what would be your method of like asking students to answer?
I think for this one, I'd just probably look for volunteers, like you did, and then you have to call on someone.
Which is also what happened. Before you ask for volunteers, how would you structure that in between time? Would you give them time to write? Would you have?
Yeah, I think, well, again, this might be good as a group just because it's a bit more complex, so they can at least talk about it a bit as opposed to trying to come up with it on their own. So I might look at it as a pairing exercise.
Cool, yeah, I like that. So you could definitely do like a think, pair, share essentially, and then have kids work together and then call on a couple of people to share. Yeah, that's awesome. Perfect. Anybody else want to share theirs?
So I was thinking more about, or less about structuring it around like a variable test. Like the example here is determine whether or not x is greater than 0, x is 5, and relating it to more of something that has less to do with math and more of conditions that they can evaluate really quickly to reason. So like say, you want to make it clear that a Boolean evaluates to yes or no as a condition for true and false. But all they have to do is look at the state. So like, you can look at a person and say, is your shirt red? True or false? It's either true or false. Not. And then you go through and or not, saying, well, is your shirt red? And are you wearing pants? Or are you wearing shorts or something like that? And so you can go through and or not and have the results combining the conditions are at. And then when it comes to the formative assessment, instead of asking, well, you could ask them one at a time, you can actually have them as a group demonstrate the result by like saying, all right, well, if you are wearing blue and you are wearing shorts, then stand up, and you have to kind of get involved that way. Or if you're standing up, then sit down, And then you just combine things with and or not so that they can understand that they have how they have to evaluate the conditions in order to get the proper result.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so you're definitely involving students, like all the kids in whatever it is that you're teaching. I'm curious to know how you would find out if a student didn't understand.
Well, if they are standing when they should be sitting, then you can kind of point that out. Not isolate them, but and then just cheat a couple of exercises together.
Cool, yeah, so you get this like, so those sort of like physical things, you get like very visual feedback. And you might even see a kid that's like, just like delaying their response, like waiting to see who else is standing up and then like standing up, or like something like that. And that's like also a clue that you can use. So like that activity is good because it brings out a lot of visual feedback that you can then be like, okay, like that kid's confused.
So I might even go one step further and put them in groups to come up with their own statements. Just create a statement that does these 3 things, and then swap and have another group test them, plug in values, and validate them. Because a lot of learning happens during debugging. So if you can prove something wrong, you quickly understand why it shouldn't work.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah. So how are you as a teacher figuring out, as this activity is happening, which kids are getting it, which kids aren't?
I would probably just spot check. ask questions.
So, right, so as you're doing these like group activities, you can kind of be walking around and like listening and asking questions and jumping in, and then like getting a check on different kids. So like your eavesdropping, spying ability is like very helpful for formative assessment. And just like walk around as kids are doing this thing and collect data. Anything else that anybody wanted to share, or alternatively, like if you have questions?
Yeah, I mean, on the like come up with some kind of lab experiments, and especially when you talk about Boolean and you know, binary. I've always liked using, you know, like switches and lamps on off type of thing. And if you have two lamps, and this is on, this is off, both are on, kind of, you know, simulation. I think some people, you know, they remember what they see when it relates to what you talk about.
Yeah.
That's probably what another approach.
Thinking about the fact that different things resonate with different people. So like some people might have to see it, some people might have to hear it, some people might like an analogy, some people might remember things better when they're like physically involved in them. So like there are a lot of different possible ways. Yeah, that's good. Cool. Great. So that started kind of abruptly, but first of all, thank you for coming. Session 3 of 4 of summer. Before the next one, many of you will have already entered a classroom, which is very exciting. And so today will be a lot of like, a fair amount, I guess, practice teaching and sort of like in groups talking through different exercises and like trying to actually see what they feel like, so that hopefully like you feel very comfortable in that aspect before school starts. So this is an activity that will last for the duration of this session, and sort of a meta activity. So the activity is the following. If you didn't already, at some point, grab this little like, graphic organizer. And so if you guys watch some videos, you learned a bit about graphic organizing. It's essentially just like a structure to organize thoughts or information that helps kids who are like very disorganized. The idea behind this is throughout the whole session, I want you guys to be thinking about different, either like formative assessment or engagement techniques that you see happening, either by me or like someone else. So in the course of a group activity, if you see somebody modeling a technique really well, like you can also write that down here. And then at the end, we'll kind of go back over it, and there's a small prize for the person that identified the most. And hopefully you'll kind of see like a lot of those things in practice. So there's one that's already filled in just for reference. So a formative assessment technique that this represents is a graphic organizer. And so that's a way for like you as a teacher to see if kids are understanding. If you like walk around and look at kids' papers and they like are filling this out correctly, you can get an idea that, okay, they're getting it. If they're not filling it out correctly, you could probably be like, maybe they don't know what engagement is. Like they wrote something down that doesn't fit there, or like maybe they don't understand this concept. So yeah, just be thinking about other examples that you see throughout the session. If you don't remember the correct name for them, just like describe them. Ways of either seeing the instructor collect data about people's understanding, or alternatively, like engage them and keep people interested. Questions about that? Okay, cool. Couple of announcements, like housekeeping related things. I think t-shirts are being sent out soon. If you haven't already, submit your t-shirt size, and then you'll get a t-shirt. I sent an email a little while ago about scheduling a check-in. I think some people, I already checked in with a couple people. But if you haven't already, it would be very good, I think, to check in before the first day of school. So like whenever works for you guys, if you can schedule one. And if you like, there's a link to like see open slots. Not if all of them are terrible, like feel free to send me an email too, and we can figure out a different one. But just like 30 minutes to be like, hey, you know, are you ready? Like, is there something I can help with? Is there something that you're concerned about? Or even if you just want to spend 30 minutes like writing a lesson plan or like talking through an idea or whatever it is, that would be very helpful. If you haven't already, people are starting to come back from vacation, like teachers, student administration, stuff like that. So if you've been waiting to get in touch with somebody about something, now would be probably a good time to see if you can meet or visit the school or do fingerprint paperwork or whatever it is. A lot of people gave us feedback in different forms about wanting to better understand how to map their curriculum guide to the school year. So like, okay, I see that Unit 1 is covering these topics, but like, how do I take that and put it into a day-by-day plan? And so Nathaniel, who's my East Coast counterpart, created this online module about it. And it's under week 6 on the dashboard. It's pretty cool. It's like a 7-minute video. And he goes through like one of the units and just like maps it day by day and like talks through that process. So if you're kind of wondering about how to do that, that might be a good resource. And then, yeah, school starts soon. So that's exciting. Folks in new classes, making a difference, teaching kids. It's going to be fun. I went to Walmart today to buy a couple of things, and the woman was like, "Are you excited to go back to school?" And I was like, "Well, I'm actually not a student, but I guess so." And she was like, "Oh, okay, cool." So people are excited about going back to school. So that should be fun.
One question I have here, sorry to interrupt. The teachers are worried about the curriculum. So our teacher in Lancaster High is kind of, what are we gonna do? How is it laid out? And I thought they should have some background on, what is the curriculum being adopted? What are the chapters? And, mapping out to the timing, obviously, is a different thing. But they should have at least an idea of what's gonna be taught.
Yeah, they should actually be able to access the dashboard. Yeah, they definitely should be able to, but I specifically remember John asking. But yeah, they should be able to see everything. And then like even the training videos and like all of the documents.
So sorry, is this the faculty member?
Yeah.
Working? Okay.
Yeah, so they should be able to access everything. But if he,
I'm meeting with him on Monday, so I'll probably show him that.
okay, yeah, he should be able to. And I remember asking, but if he still can't, then let me know, and then maybe there's something on our end that we have to like grant access.
Okay.
But otherwise, they should see everything that you see for the most part. And kind of for that reason. Other questions or like things that come up at all?
Are they still on?
Yes.
I haven't heard from her.
That's concerning. Yeah, she definitely is because she emailed me at the last session. Could be that she's on vacation. But I can change you. Yeah, in general, if you're like don't hear from somebody and you're concerned about that, you can let me know and I can at least attempt to reach out.
We tried.
I mean, you're reaching out, but that's worth a shot. Chances are, a lot of people are on vacation now. But I will. I'm gonna try it. Okay. So I think this is a good time in the summer to do this. Because it's people have been mentioning them in different scenarios, but I think it's good to have like a specific forum to talk about this. So I want to take a little bit of time to just like reflect on where we are and where we're going, and like how you're feeling about stuff, and like air those things and see if like other people might be able to bounce ideas off with you. So we're gonna do a little think pair share around these questions. So mainly like things that you're excited about, either that maybe you were or weren't excited about before, but that now you are, or like you have a great idea that you're going to try, that you're excited about for the school year, and then also like, do you still have any concerns either related to logistics or related to actually like classroom teaching related things? And so we will do like 2 minutes of thinking to yourself, perhaps less than that, we'll see. And then a couple minutes where you can share with the people near you, and then I'd love to hear from a few people just about like common themes or things that came out. So let's do that now. Let's take like 2 minutes from now. Just like think about to yourself what you're excited about, what you're concerned about, and then we will share. We will pair and then share. So I'm gonna take a couple minutes to just discuss with the folks around you what your thoughts are on these questions.
Yeah, we've
Meetings almost, that's probably.
See, excited.
Not at all. I would be a little anxious trying to teach it.
At least I experience. Some of them, so it needs to store material. Some of them, some of them. One of those guys. And it's gonna be tough. I haven't seen one. My wish was we had this. Look at which does it. Yeah, at some point. Well, even if you get them online, that's true. Yeah, the background is easy. You can grab that. Yeah, just right through. Yeah. Yeah. Don't use it. Okay, 2 out of 3. I'm not doing this, but it's something. It's like we're talking about fringe or vice here's the set you're going to get. Yeah, use that set. No, that would be a good X-ray.
And that's really nice.
That's what I'm saying. First one's
You want to keep so, are you
I found another one today. When you have that, I'm sure that
That's
I
like.
did it.
Yeah.
He said Monday would be.
I said that in that last session.
That's what I expect.
We're having fun. It's just like that first
You guys want to kind of wrap up your conversation, and then we'll share in like 10 seconds.
Oh, you did, okay. Yeah, he can just, he
Okay, so let's kind of come back, although I'm hearing some pretty interesting conversations. But does anyone want to sort of share or like sum up anything that came up about like what's exciting? Like what are you excited about for this school year?
I'm just excited. I'm excited to see what students will actually be able to really create and develop, like create. You know, I think it'll be interesting with all the projects and stuff that are going on. It'll be interesting for me to see like what twists and things like that like do with it. It's if the students know the actual like the foundations of computers, and I honestly think their creativity surprised a lot of us. Oh wow.
Yeah, definitely. Elaine, did you want to add something?
Oh, just the opportunity. It's something I thought I would do it, so I could do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Be humbled by it.
I'm expecting to be surprised at their skill level. I'm willing to bet they're bet more, yes, I want to be. Even for a class that no one's supposed to know anything. So where we learn this stuff, I somehow think believe it's going to be more intuitive for them.
Yeah.
And that may be a surprise. First, I had the thought on the way over of how does everything they do is in text messages and 256 characters or less. How does that affect how you teach a person? Do I have to teach them 256 character sentences and less sentences in little bits?
I need a 140.
Yeah, there is an aspect of like engagement and keeping it interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I agree with that, but it leads into the third one, so we'll wait for the third one.
Okay.
Kind of goes to the third one too, because 1 and 3 are kind of related. What they're talking about, will they surprise you? They're talking to the school teacher, you kind of have mixed feelings about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think just like as a general thing, I think it's always dangerous to go into a classroom having low expectations. Like, because then you kind of impose, like, there's a lot of research, but even otherwise, I think then you impose that on kids. Like, you're like, I don't expect you to do well, so let me go really slow, and like, let's like not make this hard because I expect that they won't. So I think like having the attitude of expecting them to surprise you and then like having to make adjustments as you go will probably, you may encounter kids for which that has never happened before. Like people don't typically expect a lot out of them, so if you do, they might actually rise to that in a surprising way.
I always thought if you expect the worst and get better than that, that'll be surprising.
Well, for on your end, yes, but if you project that low expectation on kids, then they'll probably give you what you're expecting. So perhaps then you can internalize that. But
I mean, I have to jump to 3 just because it's so
yeah, it's
related.
fluid, feel free.
Because I mean, what's the criteria in the selection this student fits for that class? In my son's school, the counselor sit with them and say, I have these electives, which one you want? And then she talk to them, what's your interest? And then she say, okay, I'll put you in this one. There's such a selection criteria, or anybody can just.
I mean, it's school specific. We sort of we have recommendations around intro. The main recommendation is just like that they've already taken geometry, and so that kind of like assumes a certain degree of things. Then, like they're at a certain grade level, or at least like if they're younger, they're accelerated. But it's, for intro, it's hard, it's a little more mixed bag. Like if a school is low on enrollment and they decide to let in a bunch of freshmen for Redmond, like they could do that. For AP, it's a lot more like strict, I would say. You still are gonna get, I mean, definitely like a wide range of ability of computers. Cool thing about computer science though is probably almost every kid doesn't know what it is, so like if you can get them in the beginning and convince them that it's cool and it's something they want to do, like a student that originally wasn't trying to take that class might decide that it's something fun.
So they are kind of all STEM oriented students that want to learn math, science, all that stuff. Or
That's conveyed to the school, but it's, I mean, school to school, it's hard to guarantee that they're actually going to follow through on that. Like some kids will just be in that class because they had first period open and there's nowhere else for them. And like, hopefully that's not too many of them, but if that's the case, like, there's still an opportunity there to maybe sell them on it or, you know, pull out a strength that they have and how it applies. But I would be ready for a couple, like 3 or 4 kids in the class to probably not be either not that interested or like not necessarily up to speed skill-wise. Sort of like plan for how to engage them. Yeah.
My concerns kind of go the other way because, so I don't really have any logistical concerns. I think our teacher, we're all really on the same page. We're kind of concerned that for our class, which we're told is mostly honors geometry and algebra students, that this might be shooting a little too low, that they're going to be bored with drag and drop. And how do we keep them engaged in something that maybe is maybe a little below them?
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, the good thing about Snap is that I think you can go very deep. Like even if it's drag and drop, you can ask them to implement things that are like kind of hard to implement.
Okay.
So that might be one way to go. So just think of like, great, well you think it's so easy, like make this happen.
Right.
Is your class year long or semester long?
Yes.
You know if your class is year long or semester long?
I think
I think it's the whole year.
it's the year
Okay.
long, yeah.
I believe we signed up for the entire year.
Well, so some schools, yeah, teach
Although I don't think
it
we've been
semester
specifically
twice.
told yet.
So-
Because that would change the way this
Yeah.
Well,
tremendously.
the thing about if it's a year-long class is the part in Snap is still designed to be a semester, but we have a couple of packages of things that you can pull for a second semester that transition out to like some other language.
Okay.
So last year, a team developed a Python package that like transitioned kids over to there.
We were just talking about.
That was us.
We were just talking about Python would be a perfect spot between Snap and Java.
I can share it with you. And so if you like some kids.
So easy. I mean, it's perfect for this. It's so easy to read and so easy to
Right.
teach.
So that's an option. So then as soon as they get through kind of the Snap stuff and you're like, great, well they really get it, there's this other like trajectory they can take. So that's one option. Alternatively, like in some schools, we just have additional projects in Snap for kids that are like struggling and really need that for like a whole year. But that is an option. Anybody else have, I guess, it's just entities. If there are things you're excited about that you didn't get to share, that works. Or if there are concerns that you would like to discuss.
One thing I'm concerned about. If I lose them, I'm lost for the rest of the semester.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not so bad. Kids are forgiving, and they have very short memory. So actually, like, if you have a really boring day, chances are, like, 2 days from now, they won't remember. There's a lot of other stuff in their life. But, yeah, I mean,
And I'm trusting that the material on its own is interesting enough for kids that will.
Right. I mean,
The
the biggest way is if you maximize lab time and minimize talk time, they'll be interested. Like, if they get to tinker and like do stuff, they'll generally find a way to be interested. If they spend a lot of time like sitting listening to you talk, that's when they'll probably feel like, okay, like. But I mean, Snap is a very engaging project-based environment. So kids can really like get in there and like keep the wheels turning. So. And you'll get a sense of like feedback from them about like when they're bored and you'll be able to read their faces and then like adjust also as you go. But I don't think it'll be as much of a problem. Anything else? Yes.
I guess, you know, I met my teacher today, and I guess grading is probably still something that we have some logistical concern about.
Yeah.
especially since we had our cheating lesson last week, it's like, you know, if we're giving points for doing all these things in their code and they just borrow someone's code, you know,
Right.
you know, how are we going to detect some of those things? And, you know, and is it all project based, or how much of it's going to be, you know, some pop quizzes or
Right.
reading from the book type of things?
Yeah, I mean, some of that is, it's a lot, yeah, a lot of it's up to you guys, and like a lot of times the classroom teacher has like a good sense of, you know, at the school typically grades are this way, or whatever it is, but it's definitely something to think about ahead of time, like what the grade breakdowns would be, yeah.
I think I have just a little concerns of the set of the classroom, at least at our school. Since we haven't really met with the teacher at all, but we met with Daphne several times. Who's playing the major role here? Daphne's not the teacher classroom, she's not every class. The teacher is going to do, you know, it's just, there's still so many questions. I'm just not sure about that. Just stay lazy. But it'll be great, I'm sure.
I trust you guys, no.
I was just saying too, I'm kind of the mindset that I think things will fall into place. And so I'm not too worried about those things. I think they'll just happen.
I mean, the one
Maybe I'm too
thing,
trusting.
the one thing is that like whoever the teacher is has taught before, like has had first days before. So even in the worst case scenario, if you never met them until the first day, they're still going to be there on the first day, and like we'll be attending to run a class. So like you can, I mean, at least you know that like that person will be in the room and like knows what a day should look like. So there's some of that, but of course it would be always better to have like, more planning than less advanced. But it's not, I mean, the entire responsibility for what happens is not on you. So that's like, hopefully, just something to keep in mind, is that if you get really stressed out.
Other than that, I just don't want to work with that. Pretty much it. Snap is, you know, at least you get some visual feedback. With the AP stuff, it's kind of dry, and so I mean, there's only so much you can do to make it exciting. My expectation is that the kids are probably super overachieving at this point compared to what we were like 15 years ago when, you know, computers weren't as easy to access, and languages weren't as fleshed out as we were. So, I mean, keeping them engaged is kind of be a challenge.
Yeah, I think AP more so than intro. But on the other side, with AP, you have like this exam to dangle as like an incentive. It's like, well, it's boring, but guess what? Like, we're prepping for this other hard thing, and like.
There is a carrot for sure, but
Right.
I don't know if, at least with programs, it's going to be structured here at Dorsey, whether or not the end result should be, or what the end result should be, other than just the test. So we're focusing on just the test, or do we need to have, you know, them all come up with neat apps that, you know, Windows Store later or something? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would err on the side, at least for you guys, I would err on the side of like covering curriculum, teaching kids, and prepping for the exam, and then seeing what the externalities work their way in.
I think if we have a lot of free time, essentially, because the curve is so low, the students are already picking up stuff already, I'm sure we can just throw harder stuff at them, or even like branch out to other languages without using them for the test. But yeah, just keeping that engagement is kind of, it's academic. It's just, there's so much you can do about it.
At some point, though, it is, right? It's like, great, you're not a circus. Like, they're also at school, they're supposed to learn, and like, that's what real life is. So at some point, it's like, well, sorry, like, I'm not here to like juggle, and I'm not, that's not my job. And so, I think there's a fine line, like, you know, sometimes it's like, well, too bad, you get to be bored, and this is important, and you have to learn. Like, and despite that, and that's what you do. Like, you're in meetings, and you're like, I'm bored, but I have to pay attention. So, that's also like a real skill. So, But
I
yeah.
can't wait to tell them that too. Too bad, you're bored.
I mean, I've said it in class, like, it's true. It's like, there are times when this is boring, but you have to know it. And then, like, persevering through
Welcome to your
that boredom.
career. That's a program.
So, yeah.
You don't get to write stuff you want to write. You get to write stuff somebody else wants you to write.
So, I mean, not to be extreme, but like something, it's not your job every single day, all the time, for kids to be like, oh my god, like, what a fun class. Like, sometimes it's just not. And it'll pay off later. So, I wouldn't, you know, if there's a day or two like that, it's okay. You're teaching them a different valuable skill. Yeah, are there anything else you folks would like to discuss? Okay. Great. So, let me just see where we are. All right, yeah, cool. So just like to look at where we are in training, it's a little weird this week just because the first day of school is early for us, so I like swapped some things. So when you go back to look at the online things, this corresponds to week 7, and then week 5 will be later. Everything else for the most part is like somewhat in order. If you haven't done the first half of the projects for your class, I would prioritize doing that before school starts. More so than like some of these, more so than like formative assessment or tone. Like I would prioritize getting the content of the first projects done, just because they're going to come up on you quick in class. And then, you know, like as you go, you can view, if you haven't already, like formative assessment, engagement. It'll just give you strategies that you can add in to your repertoire like, as you're teaching. And then the next session that we meet, which is in 2 weeks, we'll look at the second half of the project. So if you can at least look at those or start on them before that day, then we'll have something to discuss. But they probably won't arise in your curriculum until a month, like a couple months in. So you have some like time there to catch it up. Yeah, that's generally I think what that is. So goals for today are we're going to spend a bit of time talking about lab and like what lab looks like, how you design and implement lab, doing a couple parts of lab in groups, and then we'll look at actually leading and delivering parts of the lesson plan, and then spend the last bit of today developing the lesson plan for the first day of school, so you can like see what a first day of school might look like, and then like what you might do on the first day, so that you're ready for that when it comes. So I want to start with lab. This dovetails from what we were just talking about, I guess, regarding engagement. But for the most part, I think the TEALS suggestion is that 3/4 of your class is spent on lab. So like, if you have an hour-long class, you spend about like max 15 minutes introducing material, and then you give kids a ton of time to work. If you have a really long block, you might split that differently. So if you have like a 90-minute block, you might not do all of your 25% of lecture at the beginning. You might do like 10 minutes, and then a little bit of an activity, and then like 10 minutes, and so on. But overall, you want them to really have a ton of time to practice, and like less time listening to you. Because in computer science, that's kind of how you learn. And so there are a couple of different options for what they're doing during lab. One possibility would be like if you're in amidst a project, they might just be working on checkpoints. Like you might just say, all right, like today, you have 45 minutes to work on checkpoint 3 because it's due in 2 days, and like I'm getting the sense that people haven't started. And then they can work on that and ask you questions. Alternatively, you might have like a self-contained activity that you come up with for that concept and be like, that's what we're working on today. Or, especially in AP, you could pull problems from the textbook or problems from Practice It and say like, all right, you're working through these examples today. Or like practice exam questions or something like that. But some kind of practicing. If you are teaching intro and you go into the curriculum repository, there's a fair amount of lab activities. The other place that you would look, if you go to the Beauty and Joy of Computing course, it's like bjc.berkeley.edu, that's the Berkeley course we're based on. He's got a bunch of his activities online, and a lot of them are pretty aligned. So like that's another place to look and just by topic say, okay, like you're gonna do this lab on rock, paper, scissors, and it comes from his website. So those are like decent sources, I would say, for activities. Here are some examples of lab activities that are designed for one class period, if you just want to like see what that might look like. So this is an AP one around processing user input. And so you could say like, all right, write a program that takes in a string and outputs the acronym for that string, so like first letter of every word. And then they use a program that uses a while loop to do this continuously until they say quit, and then like you're putting them together to write this program that is using a while loop, taking input, producing output repeatedly. And so the key point here is that it's scaffolded into like smaller steps that build to this bigger thing. So as you're designing labs, it's like this way you could catch if your kid is stuck here as opposed to here, and identify that it's because of user input or it's because of the while loop, and it's not that they're just like, this is overwhelming, I don't know where to start. So this is, I think, another example, let's see, worth discussing. So the College Board put out these 3 labs this year instead of Real World, and they're pretty good. They're designed for multiple days, but they're a pretty good source of information. And so this is like a piece of a multi-day lab. And so for this, they're working with a piece of existing code, which is a chatbot that responds to you based on what you say. And the assignment is to alter the code that's there. So instead of just like responding with the default, if they say dog or cat, it responds with a pet-specific response. And then it's like, okay, well now add in like, if you type in the name of your teacher, have it say something nice. But like that something nice is up to you. And then have it like check that they're typing in at least one character, and then pick some more things that are kind of up to you and add custom responses to those words. And so this is like an example, again, of like scaffolded steps that kids can accomplish. And the last one, which is cool, is that it's open-ended, so if someone's like really ahead, you can just like keep pushing that. Be like, great, okay, well now like pick another keyword, but have it do this specific thing, and like kids can just continue to push this if they're ahead. The kids that are behind have very clear like, steps. So those are some AP examples. Let me show you some intro examples. Here's one that we kind of talked about, I think, in the last session, around creating an n-gon block. So you're telling them that they need to like draw this thing, but it's broken down into steps. So like first, just draw a regular shape, then add loops to make it less redundant, and then figure out the angle formula so that it could be a shape of any number of sides. And then put this actually into a custom block, and then write something that calls that block. So they're building up to this thing, but not all at once. Here's another example, and we'll look at this later with an activity. And what they're supposed to do is draw this brick wall, but instead of just drawing the brick wall as one giant procedure, you write smaller blocks that are like draw this brick, and then or like draw a row, draw the mortar, like all these things. So you're helping them figure out how to break down this problem and then put it into a big program. So that's another example. All of these I think are in the repository also. And then there's tons of, so these are just other intro labs. There's a whole bunch of them that you could assign to kids. So that's a general idea of like what we're talking about when we say like you're spending 45 minutes on lab. It's an activity like this that's kind of broken down into steps so that if kids are moving at different rates, you have a very clear idea of like, those kids are way ahead, those kids are way behind, and now I know where people are, without just like having to interpret everything's code. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's speak a bit about, cool, all right, let's talk about how to introduce a lab. And then we'll do a little bit of like an activity where you can practice kind of getting kids set for lab. So generally, like you just have finished delivering a bunch of information, you would have had some checks for understanding and questions and formative assessment, and then you have a sense that they kind of get it, they're ready to try it on their own. And so essentially what you want to do at that point is probably a couple of things, rather than just like handing them an assignment and telling them to go. You probably want to show them the end result of what they're creating. That like really helps kids. So if you're asking them to create like Mario, you might pull up a working version of Mario and just like click through it and say like, all right, you're going to implement this feature, this feature, this feature. They'll be like, ah, okay, got it. Or for AP, you might show them like, it should work like this. Like this is what it's printing and so on. This is really important. Set clear expectations of what is due when. I've seen like a ton of classes where they're just like, okay, like start. And kids are like, is this due at the end of the period? Do I have to get it done? Like, what happens if I don't get it done? Like, let me start really slow because I suspect that if we take a long time, they'll extend it for 3 more days. So I would say something very clear, like at the end of class, you need to have these first 2 parts done. And the rest of it is due by this day. Or like if you don't finish it, it's homework. Just so that there's like a sense of urgency. Because otherwise kids are just like all about taking up tons of time in lab. And if you can write that down in a lot of places, that's better too. Like write it on the board, this is due at this time. And like on their piece of paper and just like everywhere, so it's very clear. Having scaffolded instructions really helps, just like steps that they're doing. And this last part is what we're gonna go over, about before you send them, if you're doing something complicated, it might help to write out as a class some pseudocode or like some diagrams before you just like let them go. Alternatively, you might start the activity and then realize that everyone's confused about how to start, and you can always pull them back and be like, okay, hold on, like getting the sense people don't know how to start, let's start by writing out some pseudocode, or like let's draw out these methods and what they're supposed to do in an abstract sense so that you can go and then like code them off. Questions there? As a general rule in your class, if you say, are there any questions, no one will ever say anything. So don't steal that strategy. I just do it because I'm lazy. And adults are much better at asking when they have questions. It's a horrible formative assessment technique. So this is an example of a class, where are they? Boston, I think, who got really good at having kids whiteboard and draw out pseudocode before they started coding. And so they showed us some examples of like what they have kids do before they run off into lab. And so here they're having them like draw blocks, show all the different methods that are part of their program, write out the pseudocode for all of them, how they interact, and then they're like, great, now we're gonna go and write this code. A lot of cool things you could do. You can kind of leave this in front of a group and then have the students take on different aspects of this. So like one thing we're about to model is that you'll have different people who each are responsible for a different function or method, and then when it's called, like you pass the pen to them and they write the output on the board, and then they like pass it to other people and they get this idea of like how it all interacts. And it sort of depends on like what exactly you're trying to do, but this process is good if kids are like not understanding how it fits together. So let's do the AP example as a group, because and you'll independently do the intro example, so this will hopefully be somewhat effective for you, but you're in the minority. And so this is an example of like, let's say you send kids off, and they're supposed to write various methods, and then they're like confused, and they're like, I'm not getting this, and you might say like, all right, hang on, let's come back and like write the pseudocode for what's happening and walk through how it should work. And now you can go back and do it. And so in this example, there are 3 methods for which there's like close to Java written, but it's not exactly syntactically correct. So it's still kind of like pseudocode, but it's clear about like what's supposed to happen. And so here's how you might structure this. You presumably as a class generated this, so you probably wouldn't just give it to them, but you might sit down and be like, all right, like let's write out what main is supposed to do. And then kids would tell you like these are the different lines, and you've written this out. Great. Now they still don't understand like how it all works together. So here's what you might do. You would say like, all right, can I get 3 volunteers? So let's actually go through this exercise. Get 3 volunteers.
All volunteers.
Perfect. 2 more volunteers. Really not it's an easy activity. Great. And actually, yeah, just take a whiteboard marker. 1 more volunteer. Yes, excellent. Okay. And so each of you should make sure you do a different color. And so you're all going to represent different methods. So for the purpose of this, let's say that Blaine, you're going to be the main method. Eric, you're going to be method A. I mean method B. So that's where we are. And so here are the things that you guys are going to track on the board. You're going to track whatever's printed on one half. So let's like this. Let's say this will be whatever's like actually being printed out. This will be just the value of the variable foo that's in the main method. So there's some main ambiguity here, which makes this kind of confusing and interesting. And you're only like in your color writing when your method is doing something. So let's start with this first line in main, which is info equals 5. So Blaine, which of these things would you be able to change?
Okay, printed, nothing's going to be printed, so who's going to be flying?
Great. we're gonna verify. So that's where we are currently. So our second line does what?
Method A on code, B on food.
Perfect. So what happens first?
So method B on food.
Okay, and so who's going to be?
That's B.
Great. So
So I'm going to take a copy of 5. And then I'm going to take food equals food minus 10, so 5 minus 10 equals 5. And then I'm going to print it out. And then I'm going to return it.
there it is. That.
Next on A, right? And I do get that value and make a copy of that value. That's 5. Add 8. It's 3. Okay. I print food.
Okay, so we're trying to where does this line actually happen? Back to the lines.
There.
Great.
So action.
Here. Yeah. Perfect. Okay, so
What value?
great. Yes. So now we're there, and then what happens next?
Then we call method B again. I know. And so I'm going to copy here 30, subtract 10. 7. 7. Turn it. Main. Or main. It's like,
So now what does the mean these two? Here's the very last one.
That is one. Yep. So for
It
the now
is.
it's 1/7.
Perfect. Great. Yeah. So that, I mean, that's generally like how that might work. And the cool thing is like, I will say that it was good that I was like somewhat unstructured. Clearly, like I didn't put a lot of time into pointing this out. So like you have missing columns and stuff, which like if I were you, I would have thought of that. But at the same time, like then stuff comes up and people are like, wait, don't we need to prompt for this? And like, like that's not the right number, and everyone's kind of like involved. So that is like one way that you might structure that. Anyone have questions or like wondering how, like suggestions for how that could be better or like anything that you could be thinking? Cool, okay. Great, thank you volunteers.
Can you erase that?
Yes, you can erase that. Thanks. And so what we're gonna do now is, you guys are gonna get a chance to do this in groups as well. We have such, that works. This is actually, this works excellently. Perfect. So we'll do this in one group, which is awesome. And so this is an intro example, but generally like very similar. How well can you see that? So the idea here is it's like very similar, except we're talking about intro, and so we're drawing stuff. And so the one thing I would do probably very first is just draw like a coordinate plane so that it makes this not so terrible. And let's just say, for the sake of that, probably will cover your range. So, and then a lot of this is like drawing things, repeating them, and so on. And so what I would love to have happen is we need 6 people to actually be volunteers, and there are 8 people in the room. So I'd love to see if there are 2 people who are interested in actually leading this as teachers, and then the rest of these 6 can be instructors. So the 2 people that want to give it a shot at actually like running the activity. You may have to do it in a few days anyway.
maybe to steal the opportunity from someone who's actually going to be teaching staff.
Right, you might actually do this activity.
Who's teaching that?
That will be us.
I guess it's
Yeah,
me.
you're just, getting students up, telling them what to do, so we'll leave it here.
All right, we need
I
six
know I can't read the
students.
board either.
We need 6 students.
Yeah, the rest of you guys have 2 students.
Okay.
Is there any way to make it bigger? These
Uh,
old eyes are just like, whoa, what?
Can we
Let's
turn off the
see.
light on that side?
Yeah, let's do all of this.
To
I wonder if this will work.
there you go.
Alright.
So you guys?
We're the teachers.
You are,
We're
okay.
the teachers. Do we have a color show, everybody? Did you plan this?
Yes, 6.
The right colors?
I did not.
Alright, who wants to be row A?
I'll be ready.
Red can be row A. Row B? Oh, wait. Well, give red to row B. Because row B is red. We don't have an orange, so
Yeah, and one thing you can do is
give
like,
brown.
yeah, you can also do like some passing of pens if you need to.
And then a blue. Who wants to be a long brick? We don't have a blue either. We give you purple.
Yes.
Oh, wait, we have a purple. Yeah, that's long brick. Good enough. Short brick? Short brick. Mortar. Who wants to do mud? Well, we have another brown, but we'll see. We got purple over here. Okay. All right. Somebody has to be me. Somebody has to be the canvas.
Walls.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
shoot.
it's not drawable.
We're changing our pen color.
So we don't have to do that, we just, I don't know.
Just, well, we're gonna set pen color to red, but you're gonna draw on whatever, whatever your color is. Okay. So who do we? Repeat. And drum row A, drum row B.
Is this like a row where
It is.
the pen stays in one spot between all the different pens?
There's no pen up, and
There is pen up, pen down, but yeah, the pen location stays consistent.
that's immediately what I thought when I saw this logo.
Yeah.
I should be teaching. All right, you give us a tip on how to get them started.
So if you have a person who's assigned as this gray,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. We need somebody to be that,
yes.
but we don't. Do we? Does everybody have a pen? You have pens?
Yeah, okay, we can just start here. We just start in circle.
He doesn't
Oh,
know.
yeah. No, he needs to be the main
Okay,
measure.
here,
Right.
right, over here.
Yeah.
All right.
You didn't choose.
You should have said yes. You can be black.
I guess.
All right. So
Only one has.
the first thing we have to do is go to. Is that negative 150?
Yeah, it's negative one.
Negative 150,
And
negative
negative
100. We gotta put our pen there. So I guess we'll just make a dot at negative 150.
What's the point of this?
What am I doing? What am I going to do?
What am I gonna
The
make?
procedure's on the left.
It's a wall.
Yeah, you're eventually going to
Draw
draw
a
a
wall with end rows.
Okay, that helps me. 'cause I-
Oh, with n rows. Well, let's decide what n is.
Then what do I do?
How many rows are we gonna make?
6. It would be 6 times.
Does it say repeat 6
No, it
times?
says repeat and.
Don't-
Just do a lot shorter.
So let's definitely make an even number of rows.
For the purpose of adults, let's make it 2.
2 rows.
Yes.
All right, so let's write n
It's not
equals,
a very big wall.
let's write n is 2 up there somewhere. We remember it.
Okay.
Just so it looks like the variable on the snap. And we need to get a pen to negative 150, negative 100. Okay, I just figured that idea. We're gonna set our pen color to red, but we're really not.
And size 10.
It's size 10, so
So we have-
make your pen bigger.
Just write size equals.
Direction to right. Okay. What is n divided by 2?
1.
All right, so we're gonna repeat one time.
Okay.
Where's my row A?
Hi.
Come here, row A.
Okay. So this is x equals
Minus
1. There it is. Here. Oh, where are we right now?
We're down here, we're here.
Oh, here, okay. X minus 150. And then we repeat 6 times, I call long break, which is.
Come here, long break.
There's a whole lot of delegation here.
Okay.
Can I call someone else?
Pen down, long break.
Move,
46 to the right.
20 steps to the right.
we're at one what?
We're right there.
That's
Okay.
right.
150
Sounds like-
110.
There we go.
And now,
Yeah.
goes back.
Okay, long break, pen
Okay,
down.
I call order.
Who's fire mission?
Who's on order?
Water is more than
Moves, is that 16 steps? So we're still going, right, 16 steps. We're at negative 1.
why?
Or change Y by 18?
18.
So
Plus-
change Y by 18, so we're gonna go up 18?
You're moving 16 steps.
Oh, no, you're just more, 16,
Yeah, I'm
16
more
steps.
there.
We're still going direction right.
Yeah, you're still going right.
10 is up, 10 is up at this point. At the end of long break, 10 is up. So you're making a gap from order.
So I'm just,
Top of the dot right
so
there.
we're now, because we're at 50, this is 15, right, so we're at 90 now?
Okay. And then we come back, I call long break.
Oh, man, we're back busy.
I'll go away. Oh,
And we gotta do that 6 times.
we gotta do this 6 times.
So why don't you, if it's
Call
just,
again. You want to try it 6 times with that, that's number 2.
So he goes long break.
guesstimate.
Yeah.
So it's just about 6.
Yeah.
3.
Does anybody have any idea what number we're supposed to be at?
Let's see, we're at last one.
We were,
And then we each step the.
Should we have a 40?
Long group is 40.
Would we keep a an X register for this?
I almost want to have an extra reminder.
It's 16.
Would you recommend doing that, keeping an XY register as we keep moving?
Not a bad idea, yeah, it's not a bad idea generally, probably to keep track of all your variables, or like these types of values. Direction, and size.
Is more to, since.
It's about rounding numbers.
It just says move 16 steps. It's all about TV's job.
So we
Right.
True.
Okay.
Combination.
He ends it.
So you do 56 here.
Change Y by 18.
So 94.
We're gonna come up.
Oh, change Y by 18. So that's.
Doesn't say up or down.
Yeah, so in Snap, change is always in the positive right,
Okay.
unless you tell it to change by negative right. So that's like that. It's Snap trick.
No, that's what. No, that's what. Okay.
And still have some.
Is that it?
Okay, so that was the end of row A. And now row B. Who's row B? Okay, row B.
I'm gonna set X to 150, so I'm gonna back to.
But now we're up here.
We're up here. Oh, you're gonna.
We're up here.
Back here. And then we call short break.
And down 12 steps and up. No, pin down just means we're drawing up.
Put it on.
Just put it on right.
Get ready to write.
Father instruction.
Yeah.
So we're going 16 steps this way. Change is always in the positive. I just figured it out. Change is good, always in the positive.
over, and then more gets.
I go over 16.
Alright,
It's under 16, that's where we're at.
I better repeat 5 times, calling long brick and mortar.
Alright, so
So
you
now we're calling long.
A long
We're
brick.
short. We're calling long.
Long brick, film, one versus blue.
No,
It's purple.
it's just, no, one short brick, one short brick mortar, 5 long bricks, mortar, short brick, it just
Okay.
offsets the.
Yeah.
Right, so we're doing 5 long brick and mortars.
Alright, long brick and mortar, just
Who's on brick?
bang out those bricks.
Is it 40 again?
You went with 40 and I have 10 out of 6.
I would use 15, 16.
We're also teaching basic math.
Five short brick.
Yeah, one more short brick at the end.
Maybe that's one.
Okay. Then we did short brick, change Y by 18.
Mortar, get
Just
close.
going easy. Yeah, you're.
Where's my mortar?
I don't know that our
Where's
word
my
is
dot?
precise as we should.
Where's my mortar?
So where we're at
Again, the.
short break,
So there's no mortar, okay, I'm off by.
So you jump in.
Well, I don't know the math, but it's the same I do that. Right? Okay.
Is there a modulus function in Snap, or do we have to make one?
I believe there
There
is.
is, yeah.
Okay. So main,
Our main math.
who's main? Who's got the black pen?
Yeah, that's me.
All right.
Okay. I don't have anything to do because 2 mod 2 is not equal to 1.
Okay.
So I'm done.
Okay.
Good.
So there you go.
Yay.
So, yeah, just, I'm curious to hear from you guys, sort of like, thoughts on like how that went.
Well, I think at one point, when it comes to formative assessment, there is such thing as competition. So I think this would be a better example as you're doing it and students come with you. It also helps when you're drawing literally one pen.
That might have been better in maybe a 2 to 3 person. I think definitely having one person like driving, and then one other person doing the methods. Maybe.
And I do think it'd be better if you had X, Y as variables up there.
Yeah.
Get track.
Yeah, we should definitely have an XY register on the left.
Right.
And we should definitely think ahead of how to represent snap actions on a whiteboard.
Especially some of the like pen up, pen down things that you
Yeah.
can see.
So we're gonna leave dots at pen up and pen down just so we know where they happen and things like that.
Yeah. So I mean, generally, I would say it's harder to do these kinds of things on the fly.
That's what I was gonna say, so like, even 10 minutes before this popped up, and then I'm like, okay, a little more.
Yeah. Just like in theory, it's like, oh yeah, like we'll just walk through this thing, like it'll be great. But it's good to kind of think through it because I mean, some of these things like I wouldn't have even necessarily thought of until like really thinking through and doing it. So this is like one of those examples of things you probably want to think through.
It would probably just need our 15 minutes.
Well, again, usually this is more of like yes,
That's more of that,
this is
okay.
kind of like guided, what you would call guided practice.
Okay.
And usually you would do it because they're like not getting it in lab. Like students might be like, you told me to create all these methods and like don't understand how they fit together. And then this is where you'd be like, okay, time out. Let's walk through like what it would look like on board, so at least they can look at it and be like, oh, well now I remember what order was supposed to do. And like I understand why we were doing that. Now I understand why short click exists on both ends because I can see it. So like those are the kinds of things that kids are going to be like, if you're asking me to offset the rows, like what does that look like? And you're like, well, like maybe we make this separate thing called short break, and here's why, and they can see it. So it's kind of like the purpose of the intervention. Other thoughts?
To wake them up.
Yes, also true. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
bored, yeah.
Actually, if it's like Monday and you're like about to ask them to do the lab and they're kind of just like, nah, not into it, this is like something you can do also. Like, all right, like, we're gonna get out and walk through this one first. Any other questions about like how you might facilitate something like this?
I think before going through an example like this, if I have a question about, let's say, the difference between change and move on, so you want to be able to explain that to somebody else. Is it clear about what whether one involves drawing, it is then.
Yeah, and particularly in Snap, there's like weird, like those weird things that are like change is always in a positive direction. What is move as opposed to pen up, as opposed to like this and that, are like things that you would want to be clear about. I'm sure there are analogies in Java that not make me a lot more time, but maybe less so. But yeah, just like clear, and it's almost a good way to like bring those things to light. Like if you notice the kids are like changing in the wrong direction, that could be why all their stuff's wrong. It's because they just like aren't thinking about how those blocks work correctly. So that's another advantage. Cool. The other thing I would encourage you to think about is that it's not you can do this in scenarios that are not just I have a bunch of methods, how do they interact? Like you can also ask kids to whiteboard about like a for loop and like what the value of I, like iterator and incrementing, like what the value of I is at every point, what's the test, like what is the variable that I'm changing, and what is the value. So like lots of things that they can be drawing out like this, and it's not just for this scenario. This is just one that we chose to model. But it's a cool tool. Also a cool tool for if you have a few kids who are behind in lab. If you're a TA, for example, you can take a small group and just whiteboard something out with them, and everyone else can be working. So that's like another thing to be thinking about for when kids are behind. Great. Okay. So that's that. Let's take like a 5-minute break. So we're like right around that halfway point. So at 4:40, let's return, and then we'll talk a bit about how to like run a lab. If you're interested in using the bathroom, there's one like through these doors directly diagonal. Yeah, and then in like 4 minutes, we'll discuss it. If you want to think about this equation in the meantime, feel free.
No.
First hit sequel.
This is what's getting me. Getting me. Out there.
Has anybody gotten the Wi-Fi here to actually work?
Yeah.
Really?
Slow.
It was the,
Yeah. I had to guess at the gateway address to get to the login page.
you did the WSH.
Yeah, but it didn't pop up with the,
Over that agreement.
it didn't pop up with that, I had to try it.
Oh,
Yes. And once I hit that, I can get it.
it showed me something like 1.625. That's where the agreement was that I don't even know if that
I don't know for songs yet.
It's one of those things, right? No one wants to
Like nobody wants to break the lid.
be the first person.
Successful. But after that.
Oh, there.
It's on the whiteboard, okay.
I see Peter Thomas over here somewhere.
Something to that effect.
Peter Chips.
Right. Surprisingly hard to find actual peanuts right now. It's crazy.
By the way, thanks for anyone. Or 8. Windows 8.
Got a new laptop. Windows 8.
And oh my gosh, worse.
Yes, test.
Yeah. My son has Windows 8. I can't have Windows 7. She wants to upgrade it, but she doesn't want Windows 8. That's the only option.
Thanks, it is.
It's a good start. Well,
You can now switch your files into Chrome.
I don't know.
You're back on 98, or 10 into the operating system.
Put her back on XP, right?
It's new to her.
Oh, I love
XP. I think I still got an XP disk laying somewhere.
It really decay very fast. Their half-life is really long.
I haven't touched Windows. I don't use Windows. Every computer works is Linux. And laptops. DreamWorks?
You have to do something.
Yeah, well, every desktop in the company becomes part of the render farm. I don't like all actually. All people who use Windows are HR and finance.
You work on a lot.
That's why I'm no longer vegan. Cheese. You tell me, I'm vegetarian, but I would die.
No,
Like,
Windows.
isn't that, have you ever? Again, like, I want to read this one.
No, it's always been Windows. Right next to the ACs.
Yeah,
We got,
I probably should.
we just bought stuff. More space and things like that. But yeah, they've always been right there next to the Channel 7 News. Or after 5. Right there, since 5.
But you're right, it's what they take control of the desktop business are all Linux and use a larger.
Yeah, we have a,
Yeah.
we have about a 30,000 core render farm. And then we have all the desktops in at night.
Oh, I see. So at night you take it.
Yeah, it's actually just, it's grid computing, so we have a job scheduler, and it knows what machine can do what, and at night, you know, you add it in, and it knows what's going on.
So he's the original who created the whole.
I know, yeah.
Still have
Is Sandy still around? Is there still a desktop client?
There still is.
Burning CPUs everywhere?
Yeah, we have them all over campus. Idle Solaris blocks of.
Just running Sandy. On the hope that, is there still a prize?
There's you think about the solar showers. You're working on it. I saw something about that.
I thought the people that were doing Sandy stuff have been mining Bitcoins now.
Yes, but I don't think you can do that in education.
No?
No.
They haven't frowned on that?
Maybe. I know we
Your
have.
study is academic in nature.
Yes, right. We have a pretty beefy HPCC, but I don't think that they would get away.
And we have really like hardcore GPUs in all our boxes too, so they can really mine Bitcoin. We should just like right off through the next movie. Just mine Bitcoin.
How long has City been at it now?
I do protein with that.
How long has City been at it? How many computer years have they had? Probably
Well,
millions.
calendar time, over 20 years, I think.
Yeah. It's amazing they haven't still caught it.
Quad, okay.
Could be our detection equipment though.
Yeah.
4,
Well,
12.
what's not that one thing?
Wow. Oh, it does. It pulls like 6 hands. Wow. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. That's all that middle guy was used.
What's that? So the hardware group where that machine is in the machine room.
Yeah, it's like co-location facilities.
Oh, I
There's
see.
nobody
That's
sitting-
nice. Yeah, okay. So nobody's sitting behind it next to it. It's a SOC 2. Probably not.
All right, I still do concern. Well, at least thinking about this. So,
Actually, look at monitoring.
this, we're still talking about lab. This equation, well, I'm interested in if someone can sort of look at it, interpret it, and tell me what it represents.
For, there's the amount of time you have for each student individually.
So it comes out to like the number of minutes, yeah, that you have individually with each student. But and that there is time for one-on-one interaction between an instructor and student. So I would love for somebody to kind of throw out some approximate numbers for these things, just to like come up with a ballpark figure. So anyone have an idea of like how long their class is approximately in minutes?
For us, it's 90. We have 90 minutes.
Let's go with a really long class, so we can have like a good upper.
Let me ask the subject matter expert.
Ours were only 60.
Let's, yeah, there's probably a range between 45 and 90, I would say. I don't think it goes much higher than that, but let's I'll roll with 90. And then how many instructors do you guys expect to have in class per day that can assist students?
Oh, that assist students. Oh, that's
Yes.
better. Yeah, 4, right? 4 in a day?
Per, yeah,
Per
so
day.
in
Oh,
one
wow.
class period.
Didn't work that out.
Does the class teacher consider part of it? Because he
Depends on the
knows nothing.
situation.
Degree, isn't it?
He knows nothing yet.
Well,
Right.
it's
2 or 1 then.
So
All right,
class
let's go with 2. So we have, we've got
3 more
180,
bodies?
we have essentially 180 instructor minutes,
divided by
right?
30.
And then 30 students, great. So that gives us
6 minutes.
Yes. It was 6 minutes per student for one-on-one interaction. That's like a generally upper bound, I'd say. Your class probably won't be 90 minutes. And so that's not that much time. You assume that part of that is probably lectures, so your actual like one-on-one opportunity is actually smaller. It's mainly lab time. So there's an impetus here to really be efficient about like getting around to kids if you expect to walk out of every class having had a one-on-one interaction and gotten some idea of where they are. And that's kind of the big challenge about lab. It's like, how do I not? Did you?
Use pictures.
55 minutes here.
Okay. That's, yeah, significantly shorter. So you're probably talking like 3 minutes, 3 to 4
On
minutes.
top
per
of
day.
that, if it's one block schedule, see them twice a week, 3 times a week, maybe, so it's practically shorter.
Right. And if you can potentially then, if you see him twice a week, go a whole week and like not talk to this kid.
Yeah.
You're not-
Retain it, hopefully.
You're not like paying attention. So the general I don't know, the term that we use at TEALS for this, I don't think it's like trademark copyrighted official. It's meerkatting. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Timon meerkat, the character, or the animal, but they have this tendency to like run around in places and then kind of like pop up, and then go somewhere else and like pop up. Prairie dogs also do this, like actually out of the ground. So that's the analogy we use for like what you should be doing when you are working with kids in lab. So the scenario would be that you have like a classroom of kids in some way, like they're all on their computers, they're working on an assignment. So then you have these instructors, you're floating around. You could be doing a lot of things. But what I would recommend is that you're kind of going around and like popping up to different students and spending a couple minutes with them, and like a really well spent, efficient couple of minutes. So one thing that's important to note is that like certain kids will raise their hand and other kids won't. You should still make a point to go up to the kids that aren't raising their hand and just like ask them how it's going. So you're kind of like popping around, you and your like TA or the teacher if they're involved or whoever it is, are both like going around class with the intent that one of you sees everybody by the end of the day. So all of you don't need to go talk to this one kid. You kind of like split the class up. And you're like popping in and you're just like, hey, for like 30 seconds to a minute, like, how's it going? what are you working on? What does this piece do regularly? Tell me about it.
Thumbs up.
Right. I mean, exactly. And then you're kind of diagnosing, and you're like, okay, like they seem to get it. Mental note, like they understand. Let me move on. And alternatively, like this kid is not understanding. Let me like really quickly deduce where they're stuck, and give them something to get them going. Like, okay, you're clearly not understanding this here. Why don't you try and like print out these values, see if they're what you expect. I'll come back, and then like use that time to see a couple other kids. So it's a very like intentional, active thing where you want to make sure that you're visiting every student, ideally twice, but at least once, to get an idea of where they are and like still enable them to continue. So it's tricky, it's difficult. You have to be intentional, or else you'll definitely forget those kids that are quiet, or that are ahead, or that are terribly behind. Like you'll forget somebody unless you're like really trying. So this is like a general like operating principle, I guess, is that you are meerkatting around.
Kind of where an ADD type approach seems to.
Yeah, actually, you're like, bored of this conversation. Like,
Okay, shut up now. Okay, move on.
we're just asking very like efficient questions that, like very open-ended, I guess, questions, so that they're talking for the majority of the time, and you're collecting data. Like, all right, they're explaining. They said something concerning right there. Like, hold on, okay. So like, why don't we take a look at this? Tell me what this does. Why don't you print out what it's supposed to do, or like draw a picture, or like do something, and I'll come back in 10 minutes. And then in that 10 minutes, you see 10 other kids, and then you come back, and so you're kind of like efficiently.
Do you find that difficult though? I mean, even if you have a class of like 30 students, you have 2 or 3 people like that, that's still 10, 15 students that you kind of have to keep in mind individually type of problems.
Yeah.
It's kind of difficult to juggle that along with whatever else you're supposed to do. There's just some practice kind of makes it perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends. So for some people, I think it's naturally easy. But if you find it difficult, I would build a system. So like some people actually have like, they print out the roster and they have like checklists, and they like check off every time they visit a kid. They like make a note. They have like really clean records, so that in the moment they don't have to remember like everything that happened, but then they can look back and be like, oh right, these 4 kids struggled with this, like, or they can just look and be like, I totally didn't visit that kid, or like I skipped that section of the room, but now I can see it and like know that I need to. So if you feel like you have to like actually regiment and keep track of it, that's an option. But some people have to just like have a feel for it.
Can you record your class?
Yeah, well, I guess it depends on school policy, but presumably. Or tell me more about like what you're thinking there.
Well, to track those things, as opposed to.
Oh, interesting. Yes and no. So the good thing about that is that like at the end of class you can look back at it and reflect for like the next day. But sometimes it's good in the moment to realize that you forgot somebody,
Right.
and like you still have time to save it. I mean, what a lot of people do if there's more than one adult in the room is they'll like physically split the room, and they'll say like, you handle that half, I'm gonna take this half. And then at least, and if it's like rows, you can have like a methodical way that you're like navigating through this scenario. Just some way to keep track and make sure that you're like hitting kids. You'll definitely know the ones that are always stuck, always asking for help, always whatever. You're gonna forget the ones that are quiet or that you're afraid to ask, or perhaps like aren't as self-aware, don't realize that they're struggling until you ask them a question, and then it comes out like, oh, you don't understand that, you don't realize it.
Then you have that person who keeps talking.
Right, and so I mean that's where it becomes exactly. It's where it becomes very important to be like literally like, do this, and I'm gonna come back, or like I need you to write this down and execute this part, and then I'm gonna return. Because otherwise you'll be monopolized like.
How about this?
Right, or watching kids code. That's like another thing you don't want to do. You're like, do this, and then you're like waiting for them to figure it out, and then you're like, okay, what's the printout? Like, leave for that time part. Like, I'll be back in 2 minutes. And in 2 minutes, you should have this working. And then you can do something else. So it's a lot of just like being intentional about not being monopolized. The other part of lab that's tricky is how you help them. So a lot of times you'll say, how's it going? Tell me how this works. And you'll be like, oh, you did that wrong, and I know what you should do. Like, you are using the wrong type of variable. You are you're indexing your array like off by 1. It's very obvious. But you could just tell them that, but that's not what you want to do, because then they're not going to learn. So alternatively, you want to ask a lot of questions that like lead students in the right direction so that they figure it out themselves. It's like really difficult to do in some scenarios when it's so obvious to you. And so there's 2 parts of this. The first part is that they're going to be like, it doesn't work. And you're going to be like, I'm not sure why. Like, you're showing me something and I don't know why it doesn't work. And so there's that one piece that's like, let me figure out what you're doing wrong. Or what it is that you don't quite understand. And that's a lot of questions that are like, okay, well, what's it supposed to do? And then they might say something that's wrong, and then you're like, you don't understand the problem, which is oftentimes the case. Let's say they get it, and then you're like, great, well, tell me like what it is doing. And they're like, well, it's supposed to print out 10, but it keeps printing out 9. And you're like, okay, well, where are you printing it out? Like, show me, tell me, explain to me, what doesn't work? Like, why do you think? And then eventually they'll say something, and you'll be like, you don't understand this concept. Great, you could tell them the answer, but then it's like, the other part of this is asking the leading questions that'll get them to the right place. And so rather than telling them, you might say, okay, you have a problem with your loop. Like, what are the other types of loops you could use? Or like, why would you choose to count from 1 to 9 here? You know, is there something, you know, have you tried counting a different way? You know, this number right here is not what you expect. Like, what are some other ways you can come with this number? Whatever it is. So you're trying to like ask questions for them to then be like, oh, maybe I should do this. And then eventually they'll get it right. You're like, yes, that's what you should do. Try it. See you in 10 minutes. That's like kind of the challenge of how you want that conversation to go. Can be very frustrating for both people involved, but you just have to kind of get past it. Do you have any questions sort of on that general idea? We're going to practice it.
Again, we're talking about time that you don't have much with them. So diagnosing might take, I mean, imagine you have 5 of those in the class.
Yes.
How can you be fit in one for all of them at the same time?
I think that's where we rely on
the
mastery of the subject matter.
How about peers?
Yeah.
Someone who knows come up and help them, give them a chance.
And the other thing is, like a lot of students will probably have the same issue, or like a subset. So if you're very familiar with, that's kind of why we're like, do Mario ahead of time, or do these practice ends. If you're very familiar with them, you'll probably already know, like, it's going to be one of these things that you're doing wrong. And so you'll get better at diagnosing. Like, they'll say, like, I did this, and you'll be like, I know this is your misconception. Great, okay, like, let me lead you to the right answer. But there are only so many things that they're going to mess up, generally, at this level. You'll get a good idea for, like, you're using the wrong block, you're indexing something incorrectly, you have a syntax error in some cases, or whatever it is. So part of it is just, like, that comfort level, too, like, I've seen this before, like, I know what it is.
So I know the 1 year intro, they're going to use the whole year. But are you saying we still have to finish the curriculum per semester and then add something more?
I mean, you don't have to, but what will happen, intro year is super flexible on time. Like, if kids are struggling with something, just take longer on it, because it's like, it's very built, so you're not really going to get a lot of value over glossing over it. But in the event that you finish before the year ends, which will probably happen, we have a variety of options depending on like where you think kids are. Like, do they need more practice with SNAP, or are they ready to transition to something else? But yeah, you're less like tiger pacing in that respect. So this is just, I think it's a good analogy. Are you guys familiar with the improv game Questions Only? Perfect. Okay. So it's a whose line game. In which people are supposed to carry on a conversation, but they can only, I don't know what this is, I'm not doing that. In which you can only ask questions, and so like the whole conversation is questions. So it's like good to get in the frame of mind of like what it is that you're actually doing. I'm going to show you a short clip of this video to understand like, literally sometimes you will want to say a statement and you just have to like think of how to slip it into a question. So this is like kind of how it goes.
First ever Alfredo 3 course.
Do not want the advertisements.
What kind of food is that? No, you have to answer the question.
First game is called Questions Only, and this is for everybody. Wayne and Paul will start. In this game, they can only speak in questions. They can only ask each other questions, nothing else, and they have to keep the story going. And I'll buzz them out if one of them makes a mistake or takes a long thing to a question, and then if they make a mistake, the other guy will take the place. Your scene is you're on an international flight. You're on an international flight, and take away when you're ready. Tea? Could I have some coffee instead? Would you like some creamer? Is it natural? Oh my God, what's that? Sugar Juno? Who do you think I am anyway? Oh, to the stewardess? Let me get the captain. Someone wanted to see the captain? Do you think we can do that? You know where that is? Isn't that the little spleen-shaped island? I think it's shaped like a boot. Does anyone aboard have a bomb? What would it look like? Have you ever seen a drawing of a bomb such as this? No.
Why are you wearing your life vest?
Do I look like something's gonna happen? Oh, what do you want from me?
Will you take your clothes off?
Can you handle it?
Are you in first class?
What kind of